what an amazing two talks. So thank you both. I feel like you've done a lot of my work. So hello everyone. I wish I could see you all in person. My name's Anna and I'm the Food Futures coordinator. So Food Futures is North Lancashire's sustainable food network, and it's made up of people from across our food system. So from farmers through to food businesses, through to the hospital chefs, through to members of the university, the Land Workers Alliance, and local community growers. So the first thing I wanted to highlight, which has been touched on by Rachel and Sarah, is food and climate is really complicated as an issue. What we choose to eat not only affects our health, which I'm sure you're all aware of, but it can affect the workers that grew it and their health. It can affect the animals that produced it, and it can affect the environments from which it comes from. So the links between food and climate change, they're so linked with many other issues facing our food system that you can't really come up with solutions to the food and climate issue unless you embrace all of those others. And just to highlight the issues of our current food system, so we know that our farmers are important, but since 2014, 25% of our UK farmers live in poverty. And at the other end of the scale, we see rising food bank usage. Now, there's something seriously wrong with the food system if we aren't able to feed and look after the people that grow food, and we can't get food to everyone that needs to eat. So I want to highlight that. And just to show how complex it is, I always keep this diagram to help remind me of the work. It's huge and essentially shows how all these issues interlink. And the way we approach food in Food Futures is we call the issues facing the food system issues. And so if we're looking for answers, they have to be system answers. And I'm happy to talk about that later in questions if you want to know more. And because this issue is so complicated, it's why we set up Food Futures locally. So this has been going for something like 5 years. And we've come to realise that in governments and the council, there's no one person that looks after food. And so unless you have a group in every city that brings people together across the food system to talk about how we can make food sustainable and fair and feed people now and in the future, you have to have those people coming together. And that's why we have a network of sustainable food places, and we have Food Futures here in Lancaster. So although this issue is really complicated, over the years, the science, civil society, and people who are facing food poverty, farmers, there's a gathering through like 5 clear headlines of what we're going to need to do if we're to feed people fairly, address climate change, and look after workers' rights. So we need to, first of all, we need to reduce food waste across the whole of the food system, just as Rachel mentioned. And there are lots of examples of how we can do that. We need to shift towards more plant-based diets, as both Sarah and Rachel have mentioned. And the meat we eat needs to be less but better. And by better, I mean it's grown and raised in a way that actually draws carbon into the soil, encourages more insects on the land, and is sourced from closer to where we're living. And Project Drawdown, which looked at the most impactful solutions we can take to address climate change, talks about the sort of farming systems we're going to need to adopt. They're organic, they are mixed farming systems, so you won't just see fields of cows, but you'll see cows walking underneath trees, and maybe there'll be parts of the farm that are used for vegetables.
You've got 1 minute left, Anna.
Okay. And in terms of diets, it wouldn't just be plant-based, but it would be seasonal and local. So in Lancaster, it's tricky knowing what we can do because the city council doesn't have much control over food, and we have the county council. But in terms of clear asks that as a partnership we've come up with, is that the council can support our local food partnership with meeting space, funding. They can also align their strategies around what the people involved in the partnership are asking for. We can have campaigns for a diet that's good for people and planet. And we can support farmer transitions in this area. So we know there's a need for training, for grants, for a support network, and for creating better access to our local market. And following COVID, a lot of money is going to go into economic recovery, and we need to make sure that this is green. So it's supporting more local to local food distribution, shorter supply chains, and more sustainable food. And we need to make sure that policy around the city allows for more food to be grown in and around the city edges. And there's a great group called Growing Communities in London that have created a food zone model, and they've been working for 25 years to think through what it looks like to create a city food system that is sustainable and tackles climate change whilst feeding the population. So
Okay, Anna, we're going to have to stop there. I'm really sorry.
Can I say one last thing?
Yep.
Just to say that as a partnership, we're really excited about this process, and that we will take on board anything that comes out of it to make sure it drives our strategy. So we're looking forward to hearing what comes out.